me see if I can, what happens if I switch driving modes? Oh yes, okay. This is the new Corvette E-Ray. It is the fastest accelerating Corvette ever because it's helped by the fact that it's a hybrid. It has a little bit of electric going on, slight. You still got that big old motor in the back.
You gotta warn me to.
But then you've got this electric kind of filling in the gaps, giving you that buzz, that little extra burst. It is a marriage of the old and the new, and I have to say, it's a little bit of fun. Like, to get all that and all you gotta do is press, you know, all you gotta do is press and hold. You press, you hold. It's not an electric car by any means, it's only an enhanced version. Now, there are other versions. Some might be faster around a racetrack, but in a straight line, that electric component makes this the fastest accelerating ever. When they rolled it in here, like, this thing was made for these lights, for this studio. Look at all the angles and stuff. It sort of looks like far more expensive cars. And arguably the performance is similar to far more expensive cars as well. Big carbon ceramic brakes, and you have the mid-engine setup, so everything feels so planted. Plus it's four-wheel drive, unlike most Corvettes, which are going to be rear-wheel drive and be a little bit squirrelier. So this one just feels extremely planted. Like the way you open the door, like this whole aerodynamic piece just becomes the door handle. Plus, that's a solid closure there. And I don't know which angle I like best when I'm looking at this vehicle. I might actually like the back. There's a lot going on. It's jet fighter feeling back here. You can see the black accents along the bottom. For me, what this does is it just sort of makes the whole thing look more slim because your eyes kind of cancel out this section. It just looks really slim and quick. We have the Stingray emblem up on top, and this does open up. Now, it's important to note, this is not like a plug-in hybrid. There's no charging this battery without driving it. You just drive it for a short period of time. It charges up really quickly. It's not a huge battery. It's just ready when you need a boost. You can drive around on electric only in like a stealth mode, but only for very low speeds. It's not really an intended use. It's more like, hey, I want to exit my neighborhood without waking everybody up because you can hear this thing. Look at this. Look at this. How beautiful this giant piece is. You can also see the camera on the back there. Not a tremendous amount of visibility out of the glass, but because of that camera and the rear view mirror setup, which you can flip down in order to see a video feed out from that camera, you really don't lose very much visibility. Every time you open up your trunk, you get to appreciate your engine. How cool is that? Every single time that you access this, you get to say, wow, look at this beautiful motor. This is your trunk, and for a car like this, I mean, that's still pretty good. Luggage and golf clubs, yeah, they're in there in a moment. Now let me show you the soft close here. I just bring this down to this point, and it squeezes itself shut. Now that's one thing on the back, but I was surprised to find it on the front as well. Some nice engineering. No little weird latch to grab, you just lift it right up. Nothing crazy, no massive objects. The only other thing you're gonna see here is your windshield washer fluid. Look, I love this like ripple on the front too. Look at that thing, that's like Batman style. If this thing was in black, look at the shape on that. Squeezes itself shut, you never have to slam it. You got a beautiful car like this, and then it kind of smoothly closes things, so you don't need to slam them. You appreciate that. You love it. Now, the other thing I should mention on the exterior, this roof panel means you don't even need to buy a convertible. This piece comes off, and it's meant to store in the trunk securely. So you just pull back like this and like that, and I guess there's one more, we'll do it like there, and then the whole thing lifts up. And because this one's four-wheel drive, I really think this could be a year-round Corvette. It's possible. They do sell a typical convertible also, but I think this is kind of the nicest mix because when you're driving around with this top on, it looks like a coupe, and then you pull it off and you've got a convertible. Like, that is wonderful engineering. This thing is super secure now, and if it starts to rain, you have the rest of your roof, and you're not worried about it banging around in the back. So even in a car that's this like tight and put together, they have managed to figure out a way to be modular. And I love pretty much anything that's modular. And this is a modular roof. Soft close. This is the new ZT3 Pro, and since we're talking about electric motors, what a perfect sponsor for today's video. This thing has a tremendous amount of tech built into this extremely rugged body. Like, look at those tires, tubeless, and they're 11 inches. It's actually got suspension in the front and back, and you can see it has disc brakes. It's gonna help to soften up that rough trail a little bit. Look at this X light on the front, got this really nice headlight built in there. Even look at this charge port right here. Like, that thing has a massive like rubber door on it. Now the whole thing also folds down, just clips in like that, so it shrinks and you can put it in your trunk. So the ZT3 Pro can travel up to 24.9 miles per hour with a maximum range of 43.5 miles. It's also got quite a bit of ground clearance. When you step on this thing, you realize you can travel over some stuff. 6 inches of ground clearance. Look at that thing. We got this really nice display on the front. You can control the entire thing from here. It's got a built-in bell. Let people know you're coming. And with the built-in app, you can track this thing down if it happens to go missing. Like, it actually has Apple Find My capability. Not just Find My, but it also has auto lock. So if I walk away from the scooter with my phone in my pocket, it'll lock up on its own so no one can just like jump on and ride it away. So the entire unit comes in at 65.5 pounds, but you can be up to 265 pounds. If you want to learn more, head over to store.segway.com. Yes, she still drinks. She still drinks. It's really a unique experience. I've driven fast electric cars, fast gas-powered cars, not so many fast hybrids. When you have the two things kind of pumping in at the same time, you've got the enhanced sound from the electric, then you got the real motor. You're all discombobulated in a good way. You're like, I don't know, power. All the kinds of power I've got inside. Getting in, we're greeted initially by the E-Ray branding here. We know we have the electric enhanced version of the Corvette. We have a Bose sound system built. Everything is very tight and polished, and everything is angled towards the driver. I mean, this is the same for any Corvette, but also is the case here on the E-Ray. And we have blue accent seat belts, which is a nice touch. There's carbon fiber all throughout the seat construction. The steering wheel is one of my favorite aspects. Square circle design, E-Ray emblem here at the bottom, and the slick kind of polished carbon fiber on the top and bottom, which like normally you might have leather wrapped the whole way around, but this, I don't know, this was surprisingly, I liked this as I was driving around. This button here is really the key. You hit this Z mode button and you dial in exactly whatever driving dynamics you want. When it comes to opening and closing the door, right over here, there's no handle that like you might be used to. Instead, you just press this button here and the door will open up. You've also got controls here for the front and the trunk. Sometimes I get a little bit worried when I'm in, you know, a sports car, supercar, whatever, that it's gonna just feel too cramped or I'm not gonna have enough adjustability to get comfortable. That's not the case in here. Just look at how much leg room I can get. I'm 6 feet. A lot of people are gonna be able to get comfortable in here. They've really configured it in such a way that I think people can get comfortable. I'm not too worried about that. Now we have heated and cooled seats. We have our wireless charger behind me. This is not the best location ever. And it works totally fine, but it's just a little bit of a strange reach to get over there. Although probably you shouldn't be fiddling with your phone when you're driving anyway. So this entire center column here is where they've actually fit the battery for the electric system, which is pretty wild. So you haven't lost any storage capacity. They just buried it in here. And it also adds to the balance of the car and the rigidity. Almost no like center console storage. You do have a USB A and C port. I mean, you could charge something in there, but beyond that, you're not storing a ton. You have 2 cup holders. You can close them off and cover them up if you want. Now, we still maintain a number of mechanical switches here. Heated, cooled seats. This is like kind of quick access stuff. It's a lot of buttons, but I don't really mind it because I always want to access these. There's pretty much never a time that I'm driving that I don't want to access these things. And in other vehicles, like my Taycan, for example, there's almost no buttons. You're inside the menu and having to figure things out. And oftentimes you're clicking more times overall, and it might not be as satisfying as physical buttons. I'll talk a little bit more about this steering wheel. I told you I really like the shape of it and the carbon fiber. There's other controls that are on the steering wheel besides the Z button that I mentioned. We have our media controls for volume. You actually click these from the back side of the steering wheel, and same goes for skipping tracks or moving between radio stations. Plus the paddle shifters, which are super responsive and also made out of carbon fiber. Towards the center, this is our drive selector, and these are always kind of funky, but this one's easy enough to figure out. You flip this up for drive, park is at the top, reverse is here. These switches feel like jet fighter again. We also have our mode selector, which is hidden under this leather piece. Actually, we're noticing now that we have a few different modes we can select from, even with the car turned off. This uses the electric motor only for quiet operation at low speeds. The transition then from the electric motor to the engine power takes 2 to 4 seconds. If you get up early and you're not trying to make a lot of noise, pulling out the driveway or whatever, I don't know, maybe you want to go with the stealth mode. I've heard others refer to it as a neighborhood exit mode. The other thing to mention in this position here is just how much everything is shifted over to the driver's point of view. This car does that more than a lot of other vehicles that I've been in. I mean, the entire infotainment system is all sort of tilted towards the driver and away from the passenger. All the controls, the cup holders, drive selector, everything is kind of just twisted to be at the best reach for me, the driver. The passenger, on the other hand, it almost reminds you of those motorcycles that have the little cab beside them. So this feels sort of like being in a sidecar where you're just along for the ride. It's all about the driver. And for a car like this, it kind of should be. I'm not saying this is an uncomfortable spot. It's just everything is tilted away from you on purpose to remind you that it's all about the driver. It's all this white leather interior, but they have left some black with the deviated white stitching in key locations in the dashboard to minimize reflections, which is good. Now, because the doors have that electronic release, there's also an override, a manual release down on the floor. You can see it down there. I'm actually going to turn this on right now. I'm going to give you your first exposure to the way that it sounds. Okay, this is not an electric car. That is not an electric car. Nobody is going to mistake that for an electric car. Nobody's going to mistake that for an electric car. Now I'm in stealth mode. I'm on the EV motor and the engine's not running, which is pretty cool. So I presume if I put it in drive, I can actually start driving around. I'm not gonna do it right this second. I will in a moment. I have a whole different cluster here, which is reflecting the fact that I'm in this stealth mode. I should also mention at this time, you have a very big and crisp heads-up display. It has Android Auto, it has Apple CarPlay, and then it has Corvette E-Ray specific performance options. I don't mind the interface. I use Android Auto pretty much exclusively anyway, so as soon as I got in here, it was like any other car that I drive. But when it comes to performance, I click the Z button. Oh, I can't click the Z button right now because I'm in this stealth mode. Let's see if I can, what happens if I switch drive modes? Oh yes, okay. So if I change the mode via the mode dial, then it's gonna start up the car, obviously, in order to be in those variety of modes. So those modes basically act as presets for different driving dynamics: tour mode, track mode, sports mode, etc. I think there's a winter mode on there. Now I'm gonna try to drive this a little bit in stealth mode and just see what happens here. I'm gonna put it in drive. We have our electric sound. I mean, this is great for the studio. No exhaust. And it is truly silent. Like it's making that noise so that you can hear me. But other than that, it's silent. Like you're not waking up any neighbors with that. This is only a pedestrian that you might hit. That's the bare minimum sound, you know? Very clear cameras, obviously a number of different views available as well. As I shift between reverse and drive, I mean, this is one of my favorite views for a car like this because it is so low to the ground. Anyway, this is great. Like, I will use this mode all the time, honestly. Now, I could start the engine manually, or I could just start driving it. And as I hit a certain speed, the engine's just gonna kick on, synchronize with the electric, and we're gonna be on our way.
Actually?
Yeah.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
It's nutty. You should see the animation. This doesn't use very much battery either. I'm just watching. It hasn't gone down 1%, just me moving around here. So I think this is a feature I would actually use, like pulling out of my house or moving a car around a garage, or if I just don't want to be obnoxious at a certain point, like late at night leaving a family member's house or something. They're already like, look at this guy with the Corvette, and then I gotta growl every time. Like, this is kind of useful depending on the scenario. It's some kind of new type of etiquette, although at the same time it's a Corvette, let it growl, you know what I mean? Like, there's a point to that as well. I'm electric only Corvette right now at 28 kilometers an hour, but I'm an electric only Corvette right now. In the heads up display, it shows a meter, a bar, and the amount that it's full, and it shows on the far end, if I cross a certain line, then I will activate the motor, the engine. It's easy to sort of control your acceleration so that you don't pass that threshold if you want to stay in electric or you want to keep the car quiet. Still super quiet, ridiculously quiet. Now I presume if I depleted the battery completely to zero, that would be another way in which the engine would just kick off. Stay glued here because you're gonna see a cool animation when I flip over to the gas engine. And it went from 38 to 39 just on the regen. Oh, there we go. Why did we transition there? I don't know. I was just gliding. Maybe it can't go below 40% or something. But did you see it kick on? It's pretty cool. And now we can also show some of the different modes. So if I click the Z button, you'll see I have manual configuration of steering, suspension, engine response, sound. I can also just do the old-fashioned thing and just switch my drive mode. Track, obviously the most aggressive. I mean, it's a race car. For sure it's a race car. Obviously it's a race car. It feels great, man. It feels so good. Like, just so tight and so low and so planted. All of a sudden, it's more in the handling and the stiffness. You just feel so much more connected. I don't know that there's a lot of things that really compare at this particular price. I mean, you guys can let me know. If you're cross-shopping this, but you're on a tight budget, like this, it's not a tight budget, this is expensive still. But if you're on this budget, what else are you looking at? I'm curious. Because it probably doesn't look like this, whatever else you're looking at with this budget. It probably doesn't perform like this, whatever you're looking at in this budget. That thing is sick. Like, to get all that and all you gotta do is press, you know, all you gotta do is press and hold. You press, you hold. I mean, you can get it more involved if you wanna start tapping your shifters. You gotta assume like a Corvette buyer is a discerning type of buyer. They may have been dreaming about getting a Corvette, or they may have had Corvettes in the past and they still want it to be a Corvette. So I think this middle ground should satisfy some of those existing enthusiasts and then also newcomers to the brand that like the tech and the fact that it has that hybrid component to it. And from an engineering perspective, it's extremely sophisticated. When you have a car that looks this good, you can just have a guy pointing a camera at it and people just walk past and they don't think there's anything weird about it. Of course, he's just photographing that car. It's so obvious. Any other reason, people would be like, what are you doing here? Any of these other cars were just standing around filming. They're like, what's this creepy dude doing? But then you see this like bright blue Corvette and you're like, oh, I get it. I know what he's doing.